So many of you are here for the tutorial class. Surprised me a lot. Okay, I was expecting only like 5-6 students. Very, very happy. Okay, thank you. Today, US government shutdown. You know, what's the US government shutdown? You know. That means it's not that they got no government, but their government department on all the non-essential services will start to close because they cannot agree on their budget spending. Then they got another problem coming about their debt ceiling because they borrow until they reach maximum. So they don't know they can still borrow or not unless their government, so-called parliament, allowed them to borrow. If not, then this will be once in a, I think it's first time in the history or once after a long time that they have to default. Default means the government cannot pay their debts. So can you imagine that? So suddenly the government tell you this month no salary. So first time probably in history. But that one not yet lah, that one not yet. But now they begin shut down. That means if you're in US, you cannot renew passport, you cannot do your visa. You go there want to see Statue of Liberty, but you cannot see. The park is closed because no one is there. Library all closed, so everything is closed. Exciting, okay, US. Can you imagine? US also like that. Very scary. What kind of world are we heading to? Very, very different now. Okay. But never mind, US can shut down. F8 will go on. Okay. Exam is still there. Alright, now we look at this June 09 question. Now today we're gonna look at your past year. Okay. Now I think probably since it's the first time, your exam paper will be in this way. You're gonna get 5 questions. Okay, you're gonna get 5 questions, all compulsory. With question 1 is a case study. Okay. Now last time say all these things not so meaningful, but today is getting more meaningful because you start to know and understand what is it. Now the 30 marks case study, it's on audit procedure. That means it's all about what you're going to do as an auditor. How do you check something and stuff like that is in question 1. Now question 2, it's 10 marks theory. Okay. So the so-called theory is they will ask things like the standards, regulatory framework, these kind of things. Okay, so you expect there are quite a few small parts, like 2 to 3 parts. Okay, there are 2 to 3 parts that they will ask, like maybe 3 mark, 3 mark, 4 mark, 5 mark, 5 mark kind of question. Okay, now question 3 to question 5, it's 20 marks each, and it can be on any area. Alright, it can be on any area, but question 5 must be on finalization of audit. So what is the finalization of audit? Now that is the part that you learn now. We just learn audit reporting. We begin off with subsequent event. So these are the area that you're going to see for question 5. Okay, so that will be the final last few chapters that we're studying. So example like audit report, subsequent event, these kind of things is under question 5. Okay, now so that's how paper going to be. Okay, we're going to see a few of the exam. So for a start I will pick a mix from different areas to show you how actually examiner can test you. Now then the last tutorial I will do with the last exam question. Okay, so I'll show you the question from June 2013 so that you can have the feel of the latest exam, how was the standard. Okay, now so we start with this. This is June 2009. What's your page number? Some more page. 31. Page 31. Okay. Oh, then my page is correct. Alright, now the requirement for this question. Okay. Where is my requirement? My requirement page, don't know where. Can I borrow first? Okay, now we see what they want us to do over here. Okay. Now 30 marks that they divide into many small parts. Okay. So as you see that not everything is case oriented. Okay. So some you can answer straight away. Okay. Now like part A, they link a bit to theory. They ask us with 8 marks. They say list and explain the purpose of the main section of an audit strategy document. Now for each of the section, give an example that's relevant to B star. Then B, for the cash sales systems of B star, now identify risks that could affect assertion of completeness of sales and cash receipt. So which one that will affect completeness of sales and cash receipt? Now discuss to the extent to which test of control and substantive procedure could be used to confirm the assertion of completeness of income. Now then part C, they say list the substantive analytical procedure that you can use to give assurance on the income of the ticket sales, and then the substantive procedures that you can give assurance on the total income for ticket sales. Now the difference is this is for one day and this is for the whole year. So you're going to come up with some AP. So you must design the formula, and finally list down the audit procedures that you will do to audit credit card receivable. So this is to audit receivable, but more specific from credit cards. Okay. Now we read what is this question all about now. Now it says that B star is a theme park based on popular series of children books. Now customers pay a fixed fee to enter the park, where they can participate in a variety of activities such as riding roller coaster, playing on slide, purchasing themed souvenirs from the gift shop. So you can see that besides paying for the tickets to enter, we also have souvenir. Okay, now this is how they tell you about the story regarding the theme park. Now then they go on and say the park is open all year and has been in operation for the last 7 years. Now it is located in a country which has very little rainfall, and the park is open air. That means it's not covered. Most of the parks are like that. Okay, so they're open air, they're not covered. Has been in operation, they're not covered. So if there's any poor weather as a result of rain, will cause a significant fall in the number of customers for that day. So normally there will be a fall of about half. So if one day you got 1,000 visitors, rainy day you only get 500. Okay. Now why must they tell all these things to us? Because when you do AP that time, you will need to take into account all these things. Relationship, follow? Okay. Now during the last 7 years, there have been on average 30 days in a year that you have rain. So again, you know that they open for the whole year, and if you have 30 days with rain, that means that 30 days the sales will be about half of the normal sales. So this is why you must look at all these relationships later to predict how much sales you're going to get. Okay. Now B star is now very successful. The customers numbers are increasing approximately 15% each year. Now if your sales are growing, then obviously you look at last year ticket sales and you compare with this year ticket sales, what kind of expectation you must have. You look at the numbers, you more or less can guess it, right? Okay. Now ticket sales. Okay, customers purchase ticket to enter the theme park from ticket offices located outside the park. Now tickets are only valid on the day of the purchase. Adults, children are charged the same price for admission, and tickets are pre-printed and they are stored in each of the ticket office. So the ticket is not like when you go to Sunway or all these kind of park where they print out the label. then they stick on your hand like a band like that. Okay, now this is not, they give you a ticket, just like you go Disneyland, you buy a ticket, then you go inside the counter, you swipe in. Okay, so something like that. Okay, now the tickets can be purchased using cash or credit card. Now every ticket has a number comprising of two elements. The 2-digit relating to ticket office, followed by 6-digit to identify the ticket. Now the last 6 digits are ascending sequential number. That means there's a sequential number of the ticket. Okay. Now cash sales. All the ticket sales are recorded on a computer, showing the amount of each sale and the number of tickets issued. And this information is transferred electronically to the accounts office. Cash is collected regularly from each ticket office by 2 security guards. The cash is then counted by the 2 accounts clerk and then banked on a daily basis. Total cash from each ticket office is agreed to the sales information that has been transferred from each office, and the cash received is then recorded in the cash book as well as in the general ledger. So there's the process of what happened to the cash sales. Now for credit card sales, now payment by credit cards are authorized online as customers purchase their ticket. Computers in the ticket office record the sales information, which is transferred electronically to the accounts office. Credit card sales are recorded for each credit card company in a receivable ledger. When the payment is received from credit card companies, the accounts clerk agree to the total sales volume to the amount received from the credit cards company, less the commission payable to those companies. The receivable ledger is then updated with payment received. And now you're going to start planning the audit of B star. The date is 3rd of June 2009. Their year end is 30th June 2009. Okay. Now, so they've given us all the information over here. Now, the first part that we see just now is they ask us that what are the key sections that you expect to see in audit strategy, the purpose, and what do you expect to see them when you make a reference to the example from B star. Now, what you're going to do here is, first of all, now the theory to start with. Okay, so which knowledge that we need here to answer part A? Now, our knowledge will come from what we learn in chapter 4, right? When we learn about audit strategy. Okay, so when we talk about audit strategy, now we start on the theory first. Now, when you learn about the theory of audit strategy, how many sections that you've learned? How many sections are there? How many? 2個、3個、4個、5個、6個、7個。哎，读书读到12点了，这么巧就没有读到这个啊？你看就是这样奇怪的 ，OK？Which one? C. 它 correct not? I say you never revise huh? C 它 what is C 它 C 了 you know C 它 you know characteristics right? Some more? Timetable. A for audit approach. R for resources. You see your mouth open so big. Okay. A lizard jump also can enter. You terrible. Okay. So these are the theory. So when you study this. So now we're going to use what we learn and apply back into the exam question. Follow? Okay. So my answer will be first. My strategy section, the purpose, and example of matters on B star. Okay, if you know the theory, you know what you're going to write. Okay, then you know how to start. If you langsung never study the theory, then it would be very difficult here to answer the question. So C is actually, now write properly lah, okay? It's the characteristics of the engagement that determines its scope. Okay? So the characteristics of engagement that determine the scope. Now, what is this part all about? It relates about what? It relates about client, right? So it will give us an idea about what kind of client that we're going to audit. So that's why this section relates to the information regarding the audit client. Okay, so the audit personnel shall be able to get an understanding of their entity and its business that is being audited by reading this section. So the whole purpose, we said before, is to give all the audit staff and the team a way of knowing the business client, so that you know that this is a client that you're going to audit. So with this client, then what kind of things you expect, you read this part. Okay, now, so what are example of things that you put here? What are the matters that you put here? There's so many, right? Currency, group structure, correct? Now, what kind of business that they do? Do they have internal audit? Okay, so all these are things about the client. Okay, so example, the reporting framework that BSA uses to report its financial statement. Okay, that's an example of what we're going to put here. Okay, so the reporting framework. What kind of business that they're doing? Okay, now the business nature of BSA including the key classes of transaction and account balances, so that you know what kind of business that they're doing, what's the main source of income. Now all these are example of what you read from the first section of the strategy. Okay, now just write down a lot of things. If you recall in the notes, okay, we have a table that we list down so many things. You can just write anything. You can even say, for example, what's the reporting currency that BSA uses to report its financial results. Okay, now all these are example of matters that relates to BSA. Okay, so besides characteristics, T, it's that timetable, right? Okay, but of course timetable is not just timetable, it's about how you communicate. So it's about the timing, the forms, and the nature of communications. Okay, now this section relates to the reporting objectives and timetable. So it shall define the reporting deadlines for the audit engagement. Okay? It will serve as a guideline over who to communicate with, when, and how to do so. So it's about giving us due dates, a timeline that we know, okay? Like what's the date that we're going to communicate with the person, how do you want to communicate, what approach you're going to use. Now that is timing, forms, and nature of communication. Now, so what do you put in over here? Now the most important thing is the reporting deadline. When do you intend to authorize financial statement? When do you plan to issue financial statement? Okay, and then when must we finish out the audit? So the most important one, the expected date where financial statements would be authorized for issue by B Star's board of directors. Okay, so this is an example of things that we have. Now then also the dates that we will have meetings. So for example, the dates to have meetings with B Star's board of directors to discuss various issues. Now, for example, like the audit approach to be used, the audit findings and the expected auditor's report. Now obviously these are things that we will meet them at different timing, right? Like discussing audit approach, you obviously discuss at the beginning, but when you want to discuss the finding, you normally discuss towards the end. So these are all examples of things you're going to cover. Follow on, okay? Now that's in terms of timing, forms, and nature of communication. Now then the next one is of course one of the most important one. It's how you will design the audit. So this is where the audit approach. Now the approach is actually the direction of the audit. It is the important factors that determine the audit approach to be used. Okay. Now, so how many things we have here under direction? Tell me what are the things? These are the standard things you must do. Okay, what do you do here? You're going to set five things. Set what? Set what? Set resources. High resources 在下面啊 ，you set resources 还没有睡醒啊 Set materiality. Then you must identify which part of the financial statement that carry higher risk of material misstatement. You will have to give a brief explanation regarding its internal control. You will also need to identify if there is any significant risk matters in the audit. And the last one is quality control. Okay. Now, so all these are the issues that we have here. Now, so this one, it provides an overview of the audit approach, okay, which is based on to design, nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedures. Now, so just give example of two things that we have here. For example, here, setting the financial statement materiality for the audit of B star. Consider if there's any matter in the audit of B star that would be regarded as significant risk. Okay, now last part. Now the last area is the nature, timing, extent of resources. Done, huh? 什么？
第二个 part 后面是写的 expected audit report。
啊 ，audit report expected expected audit report. If I write, then you got no time to copy. You go and check back YouTube and you copy yourself. Okay. So then you revise one more time. Now, so we are going to see the last area as the nature, timing, extent of resources. Now, what is this nature, timing, extent of resources? It's about what? Manpower budgeting. Okay. So it's the part that tells us how much people do we need, who is going to do what, and how much time they're going to spend. Okay. So this section covers the manpower budget of the audit, where it defines who is to do what in the audit, and how much time to spend on each area. So basically what you're going to see here is the personnel assignment, okay? So this is where the personnel assignment is prepared to consider who to involve in the audit of B star. Okay, which obviously you must take into account things like ethics, prior experience, these kind of things. Okay. Now then you also consider the use of expert. All right. Now so this will also take into account that consideration the use of auditor's expert, which probably is unlikely in the case of B star. Now we don't see B star as a very unique business that you need an expert in this case. So in this part, we think it's probably not necessary. Okay, it's unnecessary. Right, move on. Now, see what they're asking now in part B is they're asking us to look for the risks. Okay, B is talking about what are the risks that could affect completeness assertion of the sales. Now, so look back into B. Now, they ask us the risks that will affect completeness of sales and then your cash receipt. So when they say affect completeness, meaning they are looking at what? They're looking at the possibility of your cash and your sales become over or understated? Become understated. Okay? So you ask yourself, don't talk about audit, just talk about if you have a business like this. Let's say this is your theme park. You're a rich man, okay? So you own the theme park. So what happened is in this theme park over here, you're gonna get people to run the show. Alright? You're gonna get people to run the show. Now, why do you think that your sales or cash receipt can be understated? Why? Now give an example, e.g. Now one reason I believe is the tickets are being issued but not registered. By, now they mention about ticket office. Okay, no specific position given. So the tickets are being issued but they are not registered by the staff at the ticket offices. And why will they be not registering the sales? If you are the staff, what's the idea? Don't register so that you can take the money, right? So that they misappropriate them. Okay, now think of other risks. Don't use audit, use normal common sense. This is a business. What problem that you believe will cause sales being not recorded? Think like that. And please don't say I cannot think. You cannot think, then exam cannot think. Exam cannot think, then you will come back again. I want an answer from you. You are so sleepy. You give me an answer later. Human error. Maybe. Why not? It's perfectly fine. Okay. The risk of human errors, where an incorrect amount of sales being registered, which could have led to understatement. Okay, so when I type in that time, I type in the wrong amount, so that's the reason why there's an understatement over here. Okay, what else? Let's say you are in 7-Eleven. Okay, don't talk about theme park, talk about 7-Eleven. As a cashier in 7-Eleven, you can sell the goods, but you purposely don't want to register. So the customer give you money, you just say 5 ringgit, you take the money, but you don't press the machine. So you take the money. Now another possibility is what? Your friend come. Your friend say, hey, I want chewing gum, but it's your friend. So, take lah. Don't need money, man. Take. It's the same, right? Of course, it's different issue lah. Okay. Now, more or less, it's still like you're misappropriating, but it's completely different situation. You can also be having a collusion that you give away the things for free. So in this case, is you're not giving the chewing gum, you're giving the tickets. That's a risk, right? Can you see or not? That the tickets are issued out for free by the ticket office staff to their friends and relatives. Now, where else that we can see a problem? So now the problem is we are blaming the people in the ticket sales. Who else can also be playing some funny tricks now? The clerk and the security guard, right? Because if you read the story, they tell us that the sales are recorded in the computer, then they transfer to the accounts office. Okay? Then what happened now is the guard will take the cash and count by 2 accounts clerk and bank in. Which obviously when they bank in, they must bank in the amount which tally back to whatever you put in their accounts. So now if the guard and the clerk collude, then they say if we take some of the money, then later I adjust the record. That's also a possibility, right? So this is also another possibility that maybe a collusion between the guard and the accounts clerk by misappropriating the actual cash, and then accounts clerk to understate the sales in the accounting records. If there's only one guy doing it, it's difficult, correct or not? Because there's a guard and there's a clerk there. The clerk takes, the guard will know. The guard takes, the clerk will know. But you collude both body, nobody know. Yes or not? So two person involved. Now this is example of risk. Follow up, okay? Now these are those kind of questions I say you read and you gotta ask yourself what they want and you answer. You don't learn this kind of thing in classroom, okay? So these are those that you have to think, but you have the knowledge on how to do. Follow up, okay? Now, so that's B1. Okay, what's in B2? Now B2 is asking something a bit theoretical now. They ask us about to what extent that you can use TOC and SP to confirm completeness of your income. Okay, B2. To what extent that you can use TOC and SP to confirm completeness of your income. Now really what they're asking us is two things all together. Now you think and see, to what extent that you can use test or control. Now we can only use test or control because what do you expect? You expect control to be effective. I mean, control not effective, why would you be using test or control? You think logically, that to what extent you will rely on test or control in this case, so that you can use them to support completeness of income. Now then the condition is you must have effective control. But the control must relate back to completeness of income. So do you find in this case that the control to ensure completeness of income is there or not? Strong or not? Okay, is it strong or not strong? That's what is very important for us to see. Okay, now so the first thing I'm going to tell over here is what is TOC to give us an idea. Okay, now purpose of test of control procedure is to evaluate effectiveness of an internal control. Why? So that auditor can decide whether to rely on them. Okay, now we know that auditor will perform TOC if the relevant control is expected to be effective. That's what we're going to see here. Okay, you expect control got to be effective. Now we must apply back to the requirement of the question. Now the question that they are saying now is completeness of income. So you ask yourself when you read the case, what do you think about control for completeness of income? Now, do you feel the risk of income being overstated is high or understated is high? That's why they ask you in part B number 1 to give you some hint. Okay, they already tell you completeness of income. They already ask you about the risk. And it seems like we identified quite a number of problems. So we can look from the case study that there seems to be quite poor internal control. Okay? If you have very poor internal control, then what's the point of testing the control? The control is not good. Right? Okay, so that's what you're going to explain here. Okay? Now, so control regarding completeness of income. Controls over completeness of income. Okay, why we find that is weak? The case did not mention existence of control to detect understatement of sales as well as your income. Okay, now example, there is no reconciliation of the tickets issued to the sales record. Now, I mean, the easiest way for us to know if the sales are understated or not is you count how many tickets you issue and then you check how much sales you achieve. But you see, the question never say that, right? Okay, so it's not mentioned. They did mention that they will be counting the cash, this and that, but they didn't mention about checking understatement. Then number 2, there's also absence of control to ensure that the accounts clerk will completely process the sales registered at the accounts office into the accounting record. Because if you read carefully again, what we read from the case study just now is they mention to us that information is transferred to the office unit. And then after that, they bank in the money. Whatever they receive, then they record. Okay? Now, this is what they do. Now, don't you find that actually this thing is quite stupid? Because if you're so sure that whatever you record in the ticket office is the sales, by right, you should just make this automated, right? You must be straight away enter the account, that you don't need to go through accounts clerk. Then you go through accounts clerk, the accounts clerk can modify the record. But if you go straight into the record, then the accounts clerk cannot do anything. Then if the accounts clerk cannot do anything, then later, if the accounts clerk want to take the money with the guard also, is impossible. So this is the problem. Now, the case has been designed in such a way that the problems are there. So that's why we find that this control is not good. So if you think the control is not good, then what do you conclude about the extent of using TOC? Now, the extent is no. We will not use TOC. Yes or not? So in this case, considering the weaknesses in the control over completeness of sales and your income, TOC is not used. Okay, POC is not used. Auditor shall rely on substantive procedure. Okay, so we asked two things. One, to what extent you're going to use test of control, and we just explained to them that we're not going to use. Why? Because your control is not good. But you must explain why do you think control is not good, because you must explain something specific to the question, completeness of income. So if you're not going to use your test of control, so now you decided that you're going to use substantive procedure. Okay, good. If you're going to use substantive procedure, then to what extent that you're going to use substantive procedure? The substantive procedure alone also got two types, right? We got what? Test of detail, substantive AP. Then you must explain these two things. To what extent that you're going to use TOD and SAP. Okay? Now, so the use of substantive procedure. Okay? Now, SP are used to detect material misstatement, which comprise of test of detail and substantive analytical procedure. Now, since auditor concluded not to rely on their internal control, the extent of substantive procedure to audit completeness of sales shall be increased. And then what about the mix of TOD and SAP? Okay, now B star's business has predictable sales trend. Okay, it has predictable sales trend. It has a past trend to indicate the average number of visitors, a stable weather condition, and only one type of ticket pricing. So it becomes suitable, right? So it becomes easy for us. So it is actually appropriate to rely on substantive analytical procedure to audit for completeness of sales or income. Okay, but obviously because control is not strong, so by just relying on AP alone is not enough, because AP can only allow us to do a prediction. So end of the day, you want to do the test of detail to confirm. Okay, so not. So that's why some tests of details are necessary. Okay, so the TODs are necessary, especially on area where unusual fluctuations are reviewed by the SAP above. Now, so what they are asking in part B over here is they actually ask us about nature, timing, extent of your audit procedure. And you know that when you talk about NTE, you have TOC, you have SP. So you need to understand the concept when that TOC is used and when that SP is used. Okay, and this one relate back to the risk that we talked about just now in B number 1. Now, so part B, it's a bit difficult, all right? Because most students, they can't think like that. So you look at the question, they don't know what the examiner want, then they simply go in and write something. Follow? Okay, so this is part B. So we finish off with B. Now, what we have here in C is they want us to design the analytical procedure. Okay, now see, there are two parts that they ask in C. So C1 is they want us to give analytical procedure that can give us the daily sales. Okay, how do you come up with formula that can predict daily sales? And then they ask again, give some formula to predict yearly sales. Now they ask for AP, that means they want us to give the formula. So what we do here in part C number 1, okay, the question say list substantive AP, right? i.e. you have to invent the formula. Okay, it's very simple, it's very simple. Daily sales. Okay, now I can compare the daily sales actual with management's forecast. Okay, now I can compare the daily sales with the average daily sales based on different weather condition. Okay, now so what I'm trying to say is example. Okay, I'm just giving an example to explain to you my point. Okay, maybe when the weather is hot, okay, hot day, on average you get about, let's say, 20,000 tickets times $10. So your daily sales is 200. Now if it's a rainy day, I will take half of the ticket, $10 is 100. Now I take this and compare with my actual. So you take one day that is hot day and compare the sales. You take one day that's rainy day and compare the sales, and see if there is any unusual difference. Okay, because we don't expect that this thing to run by March, follow not? Okay, now we can also look at correlation. Okay, now we can calculate the percentage of, let's say, ticket sales per day. Put daily lah. Daily ticket sales over daily souvenir sales. Okay, so I calculate the percentage of daily ticket sales, daily souvenir sales for prior year, and compare it with the current year. So I just want to see whether that they are consistent, okay? Because usually we expect that there's a correlation between people coming to the park with people spending to buy souvenir. Okay, so usually there might be some correlation over here. So in that case, we compare last year and this year and see if there's any unusual difference. Okay, now we can also compare the daily ticket sales of each sales office. Now this is important so that we can detect if there's any unusually low sales with a specific counter. Because if one particular counter sales are much lower, that could be an indication that the staff is taking the money. Okay, because the counter open, all counter open the same throughout the day. So by right, all counter sales should be more or less the same. But how come your particular counter is always lower than the rest? Then probably that the cashier is not very honest. Okay, now this is example of what we can do over here. Now that's the part to do with how to test daily sales. Okay, now we can also take the proportion of cash and credit card as a way of establishing the trend. Okay, so compare the percentage of cash and credit card sales for prior year and current year. Okay, now it's like if we expect the sales, example, we expect that daily there's about 45% cash, 55% credit card. So if you expect that this is the proportion, that if there's one particular day, the credit card sales are much higher than the cash, that could be indicating that particular day that the staff is taking away the money. So that's why you see an uneven fluctuation over here. Hello? Now you can invent anything as long as the formula you invent is in line with the case study. Hello? Now these are examples of formula we use to test daily. Alright? Now they want us to also give formula that you can test yearly sales. Now you can repeat some of them, just that the only difference is this is for the whole year. Okay, some of those relationships that I can use from the case study is the inflation, the growth. Okay, now I can use last year yearly sales times 1.15 to be the expected sales and compared to the actual sales for the current year. Because if we think every year sales will grow by 15%, I just take last year's sales, inflate by 15%, should be more or less the same, right? Okay? Now, we can take the total ticket sales per year divide by total souvenir sales per year to develop the ratio of these two relationships and compare ratio of the prior year with the current year. That means we just want to see overall throughout the year. Now you might have 1 or 2 days that maybe the staff are doing fraud, take the money, but it may not be material. So that's why we are seeing throughout the year in total, the amount makes sense or not. So that's why you calculate again based on in total. Now you can calculate the expected sales for the whole year. Calculate the expected sales for the whole year. Now, how do you calculate expected sales for the whole year? So, example, you take the number of daily visitor when it is a hot day times, now 1 year got 365 days, so they tell you about 35 days are hot, are raining, sorry. Okay, so they say 35 days, so about 30 days are raining, so 335 days will be hot, plus we will take half of the daily visitors times 30 times the price. Now this will give us the expected sales, okay, and then compared to the actual sales, see if there is any large fluctuation between the two. All right, now we can also compare the level, the sales year on year over a period of, let's say, last 3 to 5 years, and then consider if the growth is about 15% annually. Now you can also, based on your budget, if there's any forecast, okay, so take the forecast, compare with the actual. The forecast sales and compare to the actual sales. Okay, now see, what you need is to invent the formula. Alright, what you need is to invent the formula. Now you write exactly like what we write here, because examiner is just asking for AP. Okay, so you might be thinking that is that how you're going to write in the exam? Of course you write like that, but of course you write properly lah. So I just say divide, you just write them in words lah. Okay, now but you can see examiner also uses more or less the same language. Now like examiner mentioned, see, just compare sales to souvenir sales. That's it. Okay, compare ticket officers day by day and staff rotation to see if sales are lower on some day or by some of the staff. Now that's what examiner write. Okay, so now in terms of yearly sales, examiner say obtain sales income for the previous year multiply by 115%. Now the difference is he writes them, whereas here I made it shortcut and I just say times 1.15. Follow not? Okay, so in the exam you don't do like that, like you do properly. Just write complete answer. Follow? Now, so this is what we do here in part C. Okay, move on. Now the last part that they ask us is to audit your credit card receivable. Okay, now why audit credit card receivable? Now you should understand that the bank owes the money to these staff. Am I right? Because now you swipe the card, so the bank will charge the customer and the bank will need to return back the money to you. Okay, now if you see the requirement given, the question say list audit procedure. That means the requirement is quite open, that you just have to give me anything that you do. So it's okay to include both your heads of detail as well as substantive AP. Now, how many things that we learn when we talk about audit receivable? We talk about standard procedure. Then we talk about 6 things: confirmation, subsequent receipt, scrutinized record, audit recoverability. So you're going to apply that thing that we learned in this part. Now it's only 4 marks. Okay, so you just got to understand that you just got to write a few things that you cover 4 marks. Follow? Now, so don't forget that we have standard procedures to start with. Okay, so what's my standard procedure? Agree the total credit card receivable in the SOFP to the credit card receivable listing. Standard procedure. Now the difference now is I want to apply to this case. That's why I mentioned about credit card receivable rather than I just say debtors. Now every listing that you agree, you must cast the list to make sure that this is accurate. Okay, so cast the receivable listing. Now why do I want to put it as number 2? Well, the question never asks for how many procedure. You see, there's a trick. They just say audit procedure. So if you say audit procedure, I just try to do it in such a way that I want to write as many as I can, so that the examiner look at the answer, very complete answer. If the examiner say I want 4, then you better write only 4 very solid answer. But examiner never say any number, right? Then you write as many as you can. Then we break it up. So if you break it up now, this is casting one procedure here. Can you see now? Okay, so that's the standard procedures over here. Okay. Now what else we do in terms of the receivables is confirmation. Okay, now we perform direct confirmation with the credit card company over the receivable balance owed by them to B star. Okay, now review subsequent receipt after. Notice the question mentioned the year end, right? June 09. So I apply back to the case study lah. So receipt after June 09 and agree to the sales and receivable at June 09. Now since they mentioned that the credit card receivable is after you minus a commission, now so AP is applicable over here, okay, so not. Now so what we're going to do is we determine what is the commission rate, and then calculate what is the receivable balance by deducting the commission rate from the credit card sales, and then compare this to the actual receivable balance in the record. Now the credit card companies normally they take a fixed number of days to settle the balance because they are usually follow this kind of procedure. So if they say I'll give you every 5 days, then you calculate the receivable days. You notice the receivable day must be consistent one. Okay, so in that case what we do is determine the period required for the credit card company to pay B star, and then calculate the credit card receivable days and compare if they are consistent. Okay, now you can scrutinize records, right? So what records that do we need? Now usually when they use credit cards, they say that the ticket sales probably they will authorize online. Okay, so I believe that customers will need to either sign a cheat or a trail. All right, now what we do is we will actually select the credit card sales slips for the sales representing the receivable balance as at 30th June 2009, and cast the amount of sales less the commission so that it will equal to the receivable balance. Okay, right, so that's an example of question 1. So this question touch on AP, touch on audit procedure, the approach, touch on your audit of receivable. Okay, now, so you can see you apply what you learn, but you still have to think. So there's something very different in the exam. Okay, so if you only go for exam without doing past year, you go there, you're going to see a very big culture shock. Then you say, wow, why question like that? Like, never learned things before. Okay, but when you start to do, the more you try, the better you become. Okay, right, we take a break. We'll come back, then we'll see one more question.